In Minecraft, there's a variety of blocks, with many different shapes and sizes. This variety also gives you many options as to what block you want your projectile to be launched off of. All the blocks have their pros and cons. Normally shaped blocks are what most people will think of when someone says block, and are the most common launching platform. One of the biggest benefits of using a full block is that you can ignite the projectile from underground. Most irregularly shaped blocks can't transmit redstone power. By igniting from underground, you don't have to account for the falling time of the projectile, meaning that you can get the maximum possible fuse time. Another benefit of using full blocks is the higher firing angle. Because the projectile is higher above the launching charge, it gets fired at a steeper angle. This makes it easier to hit targets higher than your cannon, or to lob TNT over walls. On the flip side of this though, because of this higher angle, the TNT won't travel as far, and with a lot of power, it'll often explode in the air. Also, because the full block blocks more of the explosion, it isn't as power efficient as other options. Half blocks are the most common alternative for a cannon. Because they are half of the height of normal blocks, projectiles launched off of a half block have a lower firing angle, which makes them great for long-range shots and hitting targets with no obstructions in between. Also, because they are smaller, half blocks deflect less of the explosion from the launching charge, meaning more power is applied to the projectile. One downside of half blocks is a problem all of the alternative blocks share. You can't ignite the projectile from underneath. This means that you have to ignite it from above or the side. Most of the time, this means that the projectile has to fall, which also means it has to be ignited earlier. If you don't, the explosion will go off while the projectile is in the air, meaning less power and a higher shot. Another downside is that because of the lower firing angle, the projectile is more likely to hit any structures between the cannon and your target. Trapdoors are like half blocks, but the pros and cons are more extreme. They have a lower firing angle than half blocks, which means even longer shots and more power, but also even more likely to hit objects in between. They also have a problem that half blocks do not. Because trapdoors have to be connected to something, the blocks next to a trapdoor can't also be trapdoors. So you have to make sure the projectile falls straight down, or it could fall down on one of the neighboring blocks. This also makes it harder to use multiple projectiles. Unlike half blocks and trapdoors, fence posts are actually bigger than a normal block. Entities, which include things like the player, mobs, and lit TNT, all hover half a block over fence posts. This means that, if you set the fence one block down into the ground, then TNT will land in the same place as it would if there is a half block, but nothing will be obstructing the explosion. Note that with smaller cannons, the water will just flow over the fence and out of the cannon, but if you put a pressure plate on the fence, it will stop the water. This does not interfere with the power of the cannon much, if at all. Ladders have the lobbing ability of a normal block, but with the power efficiency of a fence post. Ladders are just big enough to hold up TNT, but block little of the blast from the launching charge. The biggest downfall of ladders is similar to that of trapdoors. Ladders must be connected to something, so for maximum power, you need to make sure that the projectile falls straight down. As you can see, there are plenty of options available for launch platforms, and each one has its uses. You'll have to weigh the pros and cons, and consider the planned use of your cannon when you decide which one you want to use. If you watch a lot of cannon videos, you may notice a lot of advanced cannons have something called compression charges. These are used to push the launching charge closer to the projectile, and will be the topic of my next tutorial. Thanks for watching. If you found it helpful, please like the video, and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest creations and tutorials.